Thank you for joining me once again. It's a pleasure to be here. As you know, I come from radiation 5 days a week. I am now at the halfway point, and hopefully, I should be celebrating by mid March. Uh, that's what I've got to look forward to. On the positive side, I see that there is a lot of countervailing forces. The silent majority is finally raising its voice. Recently, I took a course on civility, though I didn't need that course. I ran a Periscope program for several years with social discourse. I did it 3 times a week with at least 450 people live streaming it at the time and asking me questions. We had no problem with being civil. In fact, it was a prerequisite. I would not tolerate any hatred on my platform, any abusive language, any sexual innuendos, none of it. And so people from all sides of the political aisle came together civilly to discuss the issues of the day. Now, this was pre 2016. So it was 2014 when Periscope came out, and I was active on it for several years. The only reason I stopped Periscope is for a very interesting occurrence. I stopped Periscope because Twitter would no longer notify my followers that I was on Periscope. They made a unitary decision and stopped notifying followers, and I had over 2,000 at the time. And no one could find me when I was on. I've got to believe it was because we were civil. We had respect for each other. And we now know that today's algorithms on the social media platforms and on many of the newspapers and many of the cable stations, those algorithms, they only seek violent behavior, cultural disturbances, and create silos for division within a society. The United Kingdom and other nations of Europe are banding together to write laws that would regulate the social media platforms. And I say kudos, and it's about time. Our government is interfering in their regulation because we don't want to hurt just the big social media platforms. So Europe will give in, and they'll also censure smaller platforms of 65 billion and up. However, this is legislation and regulation that must occur. Misinformation harms people's lives. Violence harms people's lives. And we see it on a daily basis. It gives people the right to feel that what they think and how violent they want to become is really a confirmation of their desires. When it isn't, it's a minority. And unfortunately, it's a minority that has swept the globe. When Daniel Griffin, the clinologist who speaks on TWIV on Saturday mornings, attended a global conference in Ghana. His fellow physicians were all talking about the anti-vaxxer movement and how it was coordinated with the alt-right. And we know that when you see Marie Le Pen rising up again out of the ashes, she's only rising up for one reason. She's still being funded by Putin. And Macron is smart. Unlike Ottawa, who was allowed a minority to destroy their peaceful capital, Macron says, no way. If truckers want to stop traffic and cause problems in Paris, they better think again, because what's waiting them if they get to Paris is jail time and a 4,500 franc penalty that they must pay. So those truckers aren't coming to Paris. They're not clogging up the supply chains. It'll stop the movement like that. And that's what we should all be doing. When confronted with bullies or actions that are inappropriate and will harm the greatest number of us, we've got to call a halt to it. We can't let it continue. When people are anti-vax and they're anti-books and they're anti-free speech in public schools, we can't let them get on the school board. Teachers have to be allowed to teach a curriculum that will educate young minds and make them prepared for the 21st century. And the way to do that is to have rules of engagement. Whoever is conducting these meetings should be able to say outright from the very beginning, if you're not going to be civil, don't speak, because we're going to have you evicted. And those families who are intimidated by these bullies, who want to ban books or want to change curriculum so that young minds are not disturbed, I never heard of anything like that. I used to gravitate to every book that I could get my hands on. And if somebody said that that book was banned, you better believe I went out and tried to find it to read it. Even if I read it under the covers at night with a flashlight, I read those books. I'll never forget it, because the books at our time that were considered salacious or not good for young minds were books like Studs Lanigan, Lady Chatterley's Lover, Forever Amber. I remember them to this day because they were not for my delicate mind at the time. So our kids have lived through a much more liberal society. There's a lot available to them, a lot available to them on the internet, a lot available to them in the libraries. And, that's a good thing. And what also is good is to question the vocal minority about why are they there at the school boards at all? What is their function and what do they hope to achieve? If they're not there to properly educate our children and just there for power, they don't belong in the school board. America must go ahead with the rest of the world. We must progress. We must be able to understand our histories, because Pandora's box has been open We already understand that there's an LGBTQ&A community. We already see people with disabilities and respect them. We already know what maybe these older parents are not aware of. So if we're going to ban anything, let me tell you, I'd ban these vocal minorities who are trying to harm our children. That's who I'd ban. And I'd look towards Michigan for what's right to do when they want to ban certain guns in society. Just like they overturned gerrymandering in Michigan, they're now going after gun violence in Michigan. And they can get petitions going through so that you don't have assault weapons or weapons given to young children to take to school without supervision. Those parents are indeed responsible. Somebody proposed in one of the states, I think it's California, having liability insurance for guns. And I think that's a great idea. You can keep your weapon, but you're responsible. Just like I have to have insurance if I'm in an accident and some person is uninsured, I need insurance anyway because I have to be protected, and so do all my passengers. You need insurance if you have a boat or a plane or a car or a home or a business. Why not something that really does cause people's deaths? So there's a lot going on, folks. And there's a major discovery also coming out of the EU. They ran a fusion test for 5 seconds. Now you might say 5 seconds is not a lot. And it isn't when you think of time. But they know that with their successful fusion test of 5 seconds, they can now scale up to 5 minutes or 5 hours. And fairly shortly, they will be powering our world with nuclear fusion. And we won't have to worry about finding the isotopes, getting the magnets, or wondering about radioactive fallout. It's the way to go to power our world for the future. In the meantime, we've got to acknowledge that there's climate change. You can see it in the insurance industry, and it doesn't matter how much PR the fossil fuel industry is trying to push at us. We can't use fossil fuels. They gotta be phased out, and they gotta be phased out quicker than 100 years, or we won't survive. And speaking for myself, after everything I've gone through, I intend to survive. And I really want to be able to live and celebrate. So I think it's time for the majority to stop being silent, to take lessons on how to deal with bullies, to join in organizations that give you a script to counteract the script that this vocal anti-education parents are perpetuating. This is a step towards ignorance, and we can't afford to be ignorant in the 21st century. We gotta be smart. We gotta have that quantum physics. We need the 5G. We need great transportation. We'll need better vaccines, and we'll need to be able to have mandates for all kids to be vaccinated or they can't go to school, just like they've done with polio, measles, and everything else. I think there's a lot of interesting issues on the horizon. Every one of them is solvable. There isn't anything we can't solve if people who have the common good in their hearts and in their minds get together and negotiate for what's best for the country. So thank you for listening. I'm going to be putting more music out on my reaction video site in honor of Black History Month. I hope you enjoy her. She's there already, and I will add to the repertoire periodically. Have a great day, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye now.